It started in the mid-1970s when some young martial arts buffs grew frustrated with the restrictions placed on traditional karate, which limits physical contact. They created a new sport, full-contact karate or kickboxing. And in the years since, there's been an explosion of interest in the sport. You'll see that in this next story, as well as meet Jean-Yves Theriault, the young Canadian who's the world middleweight champion. He's like champions in a lot of sports. He's clever, he's ambitious, and he's sure he's going to stay champ until he chooses to step out of the ring.
Some people say people are born winners. Well, Jean-Yves has a desire of winning, you know. So that's what you need, you know, in that fighting game. Is a tough game, but you need to have the desire of winning, and he has this.
And then Jean-Yves started to get a name for himself, and that's when it started to get hard to get him some opponents. And now it's getting easier again, because when you're the world champ, everybody wants to beat you to get that title away from you. But Jean-Yves said that won't happen, so we're just going after whoever wants it.
Every time he steps in the ring, it's is he going to make it out? You know, it's so easy for him to get hurt. So it would be so quick, and but it's a chance we both have to take.
I try to balance my physical and my emotional and my psychological all at the same time. You know, I don't build myself physically for a month and then have to, you know, cram for that psychological edge, you know, the night before the same night. So I try to do it all at the same time to have to reach a fighting peak physically as well as psychologically. It's a tremendous help to have somebody in your corner that has trained with you for the past 3 or 4 weeks, or you know, whatever time you take for a fight, and he knows your strong points and he knows what combination works, and it's very important to have a good trainer.
Okay, man. Okay. Today you'll hear about the kid who goes by the book. Don't drink, don't smoke. He never gets hit. He knows all the combination in the book. He slipped those punch and he counter-punched. And he hit like no man can. That's why I call him the kid who goes by the book. Meet the champ. When we first began, it took us maybe 2 years to establish ourselves a certain system. Now it's just a repetition of the same thing over and over again. But the first couple of years was just establish something that would work for as well as myself and Jean-Yves. Just usually we start by the warming up of the body, you know, exercise for the warm up your body, and then you go through some shadow boxing and slipping and sidestepping and counter punching and all the basic of boxing. And then Jean-Yves also use maybe a couple of round of with his kicking and shadow boxing at the same time. So it's a combination of both, actually. 2 weeks to 10 days before a fight, this is where your big training comes in. But 3 days before the fight, you usually quit about 2 days before the fight. So the last days you go down in your training, you do maybe half of what you usually do, you see. The day of the fight, I make sure that all the combination that we practice and all the slipping and everything else, that you repeat those things so they will use them the day of the fight, you know, at fighting time, and that he will also be well warmed up, you know, and his punch is coming out right, you know. So if he's not well warmed up, well, I kind of feel it myself, you know. So I make sure that he warm up more, you know. But as a rule, our system works well, and Jean-Yves does spend a lot of time warming up in the dressing room, and he's always ready.
Well, Jean-Yves was competing in the karate circles, and it's a no-contact tournament. It's a good sport, and it's fast. It's a bit like fencing. And Jean-Yves would always get disqualified because he's got that much power, and he would hit all the time. So we switched him over, and he saw one bout one time on a closed circuit, and he said, well, I'd like to get into that. So I started to train him for that, and we got going into it. And then the first thing you know, after 7 or 8 bouts, the guy's knocking everybody out. So we changed on the training, and then we made sure the opponents were right for that stage in his career, if you want to. And since about 2.5 to 3 years, we never ducked anybody before, but we went after all the big guns we could get. And we knew that Jean-Yves someday would become world champion because he trains hard. I know who wants a shot at the title, who deserves one. I know that there's other up-and-coming fighters that are very good, and I know that if they go the distance with Jean-Yves, leave alone win, just go the distance, they make a name for themselves. And we never bring in any bums because it's not worth it for Jean-Yves to fight bums. The guy's going to fight in Ottawa, for example, is only 7 fights. He's 7-0 with 7 knockouts. I don't think he's got the experience that Jean-Yves has got, that's for sure. But the guy's dangerous, so Jean-Yves has to watch out for a guy who's a heavy hitter. And it goes on choosing the right opponent at the right time and the right place also. I don't like to quote a price per fight because it's not fair if you look, because people still compare our sport to boxing, and there's maybe less than 1% of the people getting $1 million for a fight, so people are all excited about it, but 99.5% are getting nothing, all right? I can talk for Jean-Yves. And in 1982, Jean-Yves should make well over $150,000. Now, take any other professional athlete in Ottawa that is making that kind of money right now. Well, there are some, but there's only a few of them. So I think he's in that elite bracket right now. So this sport is growing in leaps and bounds. There's more fighters coming out. There's good promoters. There's big dollars coming into the sport. It's growing, and it's just at the stage right now where tennis was a few years back before Virginia Slims came in. And this year, it's going to happen, or early in '83, and it's just going to boom right out of there. Once that exposure from television, let's say if you have kickboxing once a week on television for 6 months, you will pack any arena that you want, let's say 5,000 to 10,000 seats, because the sport is extremely exciting, and for your entertainment dollars, I think that nobody is getting cheated out of a penny.
He was doing without a lot of things that he had to do without, because, you know, if you want to be the world champ, you've got to do without certain things. And like, it was very hard at it for a while, but we lived through it.
I think it's more demanding on my close, my loved ones than it is on me. Physically, I guess I'm used to it, and psychologically, mentally, I'm getting used to it. But it's harder for them, you know. It's something that people don't comprehend very often, very much, is that the people that are close to you always suffer a little bit more, you know. But, she's a terrific lady.
But what they've all come for is the World Championship match, featuring the man who many call the best kickboxer in the world, Ottawa native Jean-Yves Theriault, in his 6th title defense. Covering kickboxing was the turning point in Jean-Yves' life.
When I was a kid, I had no idea that I was destined to become world champion. I was always a shy kid. I was somewhat of a loner because of that. But I always enjoyed sports or anything as an individual rather than a team member. My initiation to it came when I went to see a boxing match on the widescreen. I believe that the second Eileen Fraser fight was the main event, and a preliminary to that one was a world championship kickboxing fight, and it interested me so much at the time that I forgot about Fraser and Ali, and I just had that in mind. Even when Ali and Fraser were going at each other, I was thinking, why don't they throw kicks at each other?
Jean-Yves has spent 2 months of strenuous training preparing for this fight, and the tension in the air at ringside is electric as the fighters are gloved for the bout. His opponent, Steve Mackey of Kansas City, is ranked 5th in the world. Steve is a few years older than Jean-Yves, and his longer reach could give him an edge in the match. But Steve acknowledges Theriault's record in the ring.
Jean-Yves is a very respectable champion, and yet, in my opinion, he's the best in the business. And it's a real honor. So, you know, I have something to tell my grandkids when I'm old. And like I say, I'm looking forward to getting out there mixing up with him and trading skills. See, I think it's kind of going to be a chess game of karate and full contact.
Well, my record stands right now at 32 wins, 3 losses, and 29 knockouts. And with the 29 knockouts, I have probably a dozen with kicks. So there's not one weapon that is more dangerous than the other. I think that the thing that a person possesses which is more dangerous is his brain. If he can use his kicks properly and his punches properly, and if he can avoid getting hit, well then you got it made.
It's a young sport, and there was no real training program when Jean-Yves started.
I had to learn my sport really fast, and sometimes in ways that I would have liked not to go through. I lost my second fight, which was a learning process, but then again, it was for the better. At that point, I realized that I needed to train differently. I try to run between 3 and 5 miles every morning, and I also run up and down stairs at the Civic Center in Ottawa. After that, I go to the gym in the afternoon and spend a couple hours there. I do some shadow boxing, some bag. I also repeat the same stuff with my legs. So, in effect, I do double the work that a boxer does. In my case, I like to use my forward leg front kick to keep my opponent away from me. I use my rear leg to try and hurt my opponent. In my knowledge, I don't know of any fighter spending a night in the hospital, so we have a good track record as far as safety is concerned. It's not dangerous if you're prepared mentally and physically. Obviously, if you never stepped into the ring and you go against an experienced fighter, you're in trouble. This is to protect bone-on-bone contact. If I was to strike an opponent with my bare foot, there would subsequently be a cut. This minimizes that, but it doesn't prevent a guy from being knocked out.
It's Jean-Yves' kicks that give him the advantage in any fight. He thinks they're powerful weapons, but not life-threatening.
When a kick is thrown with intent, the fight can be over real fast.
Jean-Yves wins on a TKO.
I want to be recognized as being the best full-contact fighter there ever was, past or present or future.
You're looking at Mr. Karate himself.